Welcome back to Natural 2, our D&D and tabletop role-playing podcast. I think it's rather clear that my usual partner in crime is not here with me today. This is my good friend Rob. He played in our Ismiliath Adventures campaign, and we're going to hopefully talk about a topic that is relatively, I guess, not exclusive, but pertains to him. But if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to our lovely audience, sir.
Yeah, I don't know what the title is going to be, but it's probably about old people. So that's me. I'm the oldest of our group. Name's Rob, and I am, as of this recording, 45 years old. So probably a little bit on the older side of the average D&D demographic. Um, and yeah, I guess I'm here to kind of talk about my experience being a first-time D&D player, getting into it a little bit later, and then some of the, I guess, challenges that go along with that.
Mhm. I remember when we were first getting our group together, and you shot me your message on Reddit, and I was like, "Oh man, this guy's like a middle-aged man, messaging like a early 20s kid about playing D&D." Like that was something that like I had to come to terms with as well, like not having this like imposter syndrome of like, "Oh, he's gonna have so much more life experience than me. How do I handle this?" But you are by far one of the favorite players I have ever played with. I imagine that's why you're still here. And I think that you have handled getting into D&D at a, later stage in life very exceptionally. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a whole lot easier than I thought it was going to be. I had really no idea. When I was way back in the ancient days of the 1980s, when advanced D&D was a thing, I wanted to play, and I've told you about this, Nate, but my mom thought that D&D was like the devil. Like, so she wouldn't let me play. And it was one of those itches I'd never got to scratch, but I was always like a huge fan of any sort of fantasy books, like anything of the genre from, all the Forgotten Realms books, the original ones, the especially The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, all that. So that was a huge, still is huge portion of like my free time. I love reading, uh, fantasy books, and I always wanted to play D&D, but then, I became an adult, joined the military, and it passed, right? And I was in bed, because like old people do, you get in bed and then you just hang out and you do something for a couple hours before you pass out and go to sleep. And so I'm sitting there with my wife, and it's COVID and we're locked down. It's 2020, and for whatever reason, we were talking about, regrets. And I was like, I don't have many regrets, but man, I always wanted to play D&D. And she was said something along the lines of, well, why don't you? I said, well, one, we're locked down, and two, I'm old and I got this job, and, you know, no, I don't think it's going to happen. And then it hit me. I'm like, everything's online. So, I went on Reddit, did a search for D&D, and in pretty short order found your advertisement for the game and figured, well, yeah, let's do it. And so that's kind of how I ended up here. But
Well, so I don't quite know, the specifics of this, but the general like internet discourse about this topic is like, oh, kids these days, don't jive well with like, the older generation or like it takes me so much longer to learn a new skill that it's not worth it. Or D&D is like too much to digest, when you have a busy schedule. And I know there's like three very broad topics that we can cover, but I guess
okay,
if
well, yeah, I'll hit them real quick. One, and I'll try and give them short answers. But kids these days, yeah, there can be generational gaps. I've got a 16-year-old, an 18-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 21-year-old, and so that probably prepared me a little bit to deal with younger people anyway. But um, you know, they say age is just a number. That's bullshit. No, there is a divide there sometimes, but when it comes to a game like D&D, having that variation in age range, experience levels, I think it just makes for a better game, honestly. Um, and, you know, I think that most people who sit down to play D&D have a level of maturity that probably is a little bit more than, I guess, the peer set, because, you're taking yourself out of that comfort level. You know, you're interacting with people on a level that you typically don't in a day-to-day basis. Most people aren't going out and acting,
Mhm.
role playing. Um, so I think it lends itself really kind of irregardless of age, if that makes any sense. What were the other two categories? I'm old, so I forget things easy.
One of the other ones is like, oh, I'm too old to pick up a new skill, or like, I don't have the time to, dedicate to a new
Yeah.
thing.
So for me, it was easy. Like, one, the background for fantasy was there,
Mhm.
without a doubt. Um, and I've been playing video games on PC since the early 80s, and I've played probably 100 RPGs, so there was some crossover to that too. So in a way, the new skill really was, okay, how does D&D work? What do I need to roll? What's a character sheet looks like? And that I thought was going to be really hard, but um, the basics of that were pretty much nailed down within the first 3 or 4 sessions, and then we find to, polished off the rough edges.
There's also a lot of tools nowadays. Like there's
Yeah,
like D&D Beyond is like so incredibly easy to just present a new player with because it does like 80% of the heavy lifting for them.
right. Like D&D Beyond almost is a I love it,
Mhm.
but it's almost a bad thing because it takes the thinking out of all of your roles. You're like, "Oh,
Mhm.
I'll just click this," and you don't really know what's behind those roles
Mhm.
right off the bat, but you get there. It's really not hard. And you mouse over any of it, it'll show you what it's taken into account too. So, you can get playing really quick and then kind of learn as you go. Um, and then as for the time, yeah, it's like anything. Like, what do you want to make a priority in your life? There's dudes that will go out without fail from, any age range, but especially older dudes. They'll go out every Sunday, they'll play a 4, 5, 6 hour game of golf, or they'll go out every weekend and they'll go fishing, right? This is no different than that. For us, it was every Sunday, from like 5 to 9 o'clock. That's just what I did. Now, um, when we first got started, we all thought the game was going to last a month or two.
Yeah.
We had no idea it was going to go on 18 months and then transition into another. We're planning on another multi-year campaign. So, um, that certainly wasn't the expectation from the start. Um, and what a lot of people are going to worry about is, well, what is my wife going to think about me taking a chunk of my weekend, and playing every weekend? you know, as long as you're reasonable and you have good communication, like I told my wife, from the get-go, hey, this is something I really want to try. This is why it's important to me. And then, as we were playing and I talked to her about, hey, I'm playing with these guys. This is Nathan, this is James, and so on and so forth. And this is who they are. And she saw that I was interested in it. Well, she knew that that had value to me and she wasn't going to be like, oh, well, you can't do that anymore. Um, and so, you know, you just have to make, if that's what you want to do, you make it a priority.
Mhm.
If it's, and where you're going to get into, you know, issues is if you already have a really full schedule with a lot of commitments, and then you you don't try to manage that, then you might start getting some pushback from, a lot of people, my age were married, right? You might get some pushback from your wife or husband or whatever. Um, So just good communication, and making it a priority, and then not being afraid to tell the people that you're playing with, hey man, next weekend it's anniversary, so uh, whoever wants to play my character can. I'm not going to be there. Don't do anything stupid and try to play the game when you really have other things you should be doing. Like when I was in my 20s or whatever, I could have done whatever I want because I was the only one I was accountable for. That changes as you get older.
Yeah, I mean that advice is true to anybody. Like if you're getting into a new D&D game, you have to have a good understanding of what your schedule is and how realistically you can, set aside this time to do it and how much you want to set aside time to do it. But I think where it becomes a bigger topic for people that are older, it's, I have a wife, I have kids, my work schedule that's weird or whatever. And that's like another thing that, we don't have to get too deep on, but your work schedule is crazy. And it's, pretty insane that you have set aside the time consistently to make things work. Like that's something that I certainly appreciate through and through with you. So, I mean, that is what I think catches people.
Well, and that's your game, Nate. I mean, if it sucked, I wouldn't have made the time for it. It
Mhm.
was it was something I truly looked forward to every week, and I was like, and uh, with my job, I have a schedule that is set in advance month by month by month, and I can bid for what days I want off. And, now I'm pretty much solidly able to get, every Sunday off. So, my work is fairly well managed for the most part. And if you're a traveler like I am, like right now I'm in a hotel room. I mean, hotel internet nowadays is good enough for Discord. If you can bring a laptop with you, you can play D&D on the road. It's not too hard. And that's the other thing too. Like, there's plenty of times where I'm like, hey guys, I'll be there for the second half. I'm not going to be able to make it. That works, man. I mean, just be if this is something you want to do, it's communication all around. Um, you talk to your DM, let them know, hey, let your DM know early. That's what, as soon as I realize I'm going to have any sort of scheduling conflict, I go right into Discord, shoot it in there, be like, hey guys, looks like I'm going to have some trouble making this time. Can we rearrange it? Or if not, hey, I'll bow out this week. Not a big deal.
So,
But yeah,
we touched on a few things that were like relatively easy or simple, or the advice is pretty straightforward. Like, it needs to be important to you. And you might not have an answer for this right off the bat, but what was something that you ran into that was a problem or that was like a surprise or something you had to like work with that it doesn't have to necessarily attribute to your age, but perhaps like, again, like the generational difference. Like, was there anything along that line that you had to kind of like get through or adjust with?
yeah. So I'm an airline pilot. I'm an airline captain. I came from the military where I was, an aircraft commander, instructor pilot. I had decades worth of being in charge, right? And coming up with a plan and then executing that plan and not really having, feedback from other people, but nobody was telling me no, right?
Hmm.
And then I get into D&D, and I'm talking about Callie specifically,
Hmm.
a character that was in our early in our campaign. He left, unfortunately. But I'd come up, I was like, okay, my character at the time was a dwarf priest, older dwarf, and he was a younger character in the game, and so we're in the situation, multiple situations where I was like, hey, we should do this, that, and the other. And then for no good reason, he's just like, no, we're not doing that. And I had to like really like be like, okay, I'm not in charge of anything right now. I gotta like, just go with the game, see how it plays out. And so that was kind of initial little challenge, like, all right, yeah, you're older, but you don't have to be an ass about it. You don't have to try to, you know, just especially if it's your first time playing, just take a back seat for a little bit, see where the game takes you. That's probably what I learned from that.
That like I kind of had the same thing on the other side of the table where, once we kind of figure out what the group was going to be and we started playing and we knew we were going to do it for a long time, there were so many times before a session where I was like, dude, I don't know this guy, but like he's so much older than me. What if I say some dumb shit that like he just calls out or he thinks I'm just like so inexperienced? Like, and there was also like, I worked a job at one point where I had a guy who was like 60 who I was above in like, the lineup. And there was a weird dynamic because like technically I was in charge of him, but he had this kind of air of like, yeah, you're really going to tell me what to do when, I'm 40 years older than you. So I was slightly afraid of that dynamic kind of coming up in the game. Obviously, that didn't because, we work very well together. But I think that a lot of younger DMs who do end up with an older player in their group are going to have those fears. And you really just have to, be open to being wrong, which I think any reasonable person should be, but understand that hopefully the older person in your group is not there to belittle you or make you feel inadequate. So, yeah.
Yeah, and what I would say to younger DMs with an old dude wrecking their game is, for one, you gotta recognize that you have in this world, you have the position of authority. You're the game master, the dungeon master, whatever system you're playing. You make the rules, and you don't have to be a tyrant about it, but you craft the game you want, and we're playing in it. And for the people on the other side of that, age has no bearing on this. The game very much happens in between sessions. Like, you know, some of the not best game moments, but some of the best things for the game happened when I was like, "Hey, Nate, call up, talk to you for a couple hours," and that makes the game better. So, um, not to say that it's this massive time sink where you're spending all week long going, but if you open up your computer, you sit down, you log in, and that's the first time you thought about the game since the last session, you're playing it wrong. You know,
Mhm,
and so if you want to get the most enjoyment out of it, you have to interact. And so, but I guess to answer your question, you know, it's all about attitude on both sides.
mhm.
Like, you got to be open to learning a new thing. And if you're an old dude and this is your first time playing, or an old lady, just recognize the young kid running the game has probably been doing this for a while. It's most people who are going to run a game of D&D or anything like it and have the technical experience to do that, they know the system probably better than you do. They know how players interact probably a little better than you do. So if they have any advice for you, take it. And sometimes, you know, I mean, I'm 45. I've got almost double the amount of time on the planet as you do, Nate. I might have a better way of conveying ideas or interacting on a personal level, so if you're if you're in a group with younger players and they're acting, you know, for lack of a better term, a little less mature than you are, well, that's just natural. Deal with it. That you were the same way when you were their age. You
Mhm.
know, and now that is for that's kind of a hypothetical dart I threw out at other games. Like in our game, yeah, you're younger than me, but you act like an old man.
Yeah, I think even James probably also acts a bit like, I guess, more serious or more like tonally mature as a character in our games. Like, it's not like our group is defined by who they are.
No,
Um,
it's funny. I think my character is probably um was certainly not the most mature acting one of the group.
mhm.
You know.
I'm sure there's an aspect of that of like, wanting to let loose and kind of like do things that you can't in your current life. Like some people play D&D to play the opposite of who they are, and some people play D&D to put themselves in a fantasy world. So,
And that's great. Whatever is making you happy, that's what this is all for. Like,
mhm.
you know, you don't play any game unless you're getting paid for it. Um, to be serious about it, you know? And I shouldn't say that because you can take it seriously but have fun. Like you
Mhm.
should fun should be the start and end goal of every game. If you're not having fun, figure out why you're not having fun, you
Mhm.
know? And the group might not be right for you. Like when I joined your group, but then I joined one other group at the same time, and I found out, like, within 3 sessions, this other group just wasn't they were nice people, but I was not having nearly the amount of fun I was in this group, and I just told them, I'm like, "Hey, guys, I'm playing 2 games. I only really have the capacity to play 1. I appreciate it. You know, good luck to you guys," and I was out. Don't you know, I you know, if they're and that's something I tell Nate all the time. I'm like, "Dude, if you've got a problem, if you feel like something isn't quite right, deal with it quickly and decisively.
Mhm.
Don't just hope it goes away because it won't. It's only gonna get worse, and it's only gonna make you feel bad, you know?"
Mhm. That's like one of the like almost benefits I would point out. And this probably isn't true for every single like, younger DM, older player, or vice versa. But something that I appreciated throughout our game and I guess our friendship and our group as a whole is once we started playing, I established more of like a personal connection with everybody. And of course, D&D, there's a lot of like mechanical like aspects to take into account and issues that come up and like rulings that need to be decided upon. But there's also a whole aspect of like the group's health outside of the game and how everyone's interacting, and like that's just as valuable as and important, but it also provides, probably the same amount of maintenance or attention that is needed. And having somebody that, has been through a lot or is, handled similar situations or situations that I haven't gone through yet, it's nice to have someone to be like, hey, what do you think? What do you recommend? Or just listen to me vent and tell me everything's going to be all right. Because sometimes, that's what's needed. So that would be, a benefit that I would point towards. So,
Yeah, you know, and it's just, you know, you every group, like, if you're playing with 4 other people that look just like you, that have basically the same life experiences, you can still have fun with that, but, like, I think especially in D&D, the more variety you can have in your group, the better.
mm,
You know, it just because if you go longer than a month or 2 and you're playing long term with people, you're gonna be friends with them, and you're gonna get a lot of value out of meeting and interacting with different people.
but I think that's about it as far as like the actual topic at hand. We kind of meandered a little bit about like D&D as a whole, but I think that just kind of happens with these kind of talks.
You know, here's what, maybe we should have answered this one first. Like, one of the biggest hangups is, man, what are all my friends gonna think about my old ass playing D&D?
Mhm.
Like, there's a lot of people in my generation where they would outright view that as embarrassing. You know I did. Like, I wasn't going out and telling, you know, my relatives or anybody that, yeah, I can't be there on Sunday. I got to go pretend to be a dwarf, you know,
Mhm.
like,
The
and
first
there's
mother needs me.
yeah, and there's still some of that. But over the last year and a half, like, you can't cover it up like some dark secret. At a certain point, people are going to find out. And what I found out is nobody cares. No, yeah, maybe that's not their cup of tea, but no, you are who you are. You have the friends that you have the family that you have, and nobody cares that that's how you want to spend 4 hours on a random Sunday. Nobody's going to look down on you for it. And, you know, contrary to that, like, here, I'll give you this. I was just at a wedding, for one of my classmates, in the airlines. Um, Went out to California. We're there, and my wife outed me at the table. She was like, "You know what Rob does on Sundays? He plays D&D." And I'm like, "Oh my God, why would you even bring that up?"
Mhm.
And I was with most of the people at the table were in mid to late 30s. Um, and everyone thought it was cool, and then guess what? Like, 2 of them also played, and a couple of them were like, "Yeah, I've been wanting to play," and, yeah, and then we had this conversation about D&D, and it wasn't embarrassing at all,
Mhm.
like, um, so, maybe I'm a weirdo, maybe most people aren't, like, hung up about that, but I know it took me a long time to, tell anybody, like, "Oh, yeah, that's what I do." I just figured, I didn't wanna deal with people thinking that I was some, weirdo out, whatever, and that
Mhm.
just wasn't the case.
Well, I think it's a very acceptable fear to have because, like, not only is there actual like history with D&D being viewed either negatively or actually harmful or just like being weird and kind of fringe, but whenever you are outside of a hobby and then you get into it, you're not sure if your current friend group or your social circle cares about that or thinks something weird about that. What I would find whenever I would, tell someone that, oh, I can't do that Sunday, I have a D&D game to run, even though everyone knows that I am the most dense, nerdy person possible, so it's not going to come as a surprise that I play D&D. Generally, the response is, oh, that's neat, or what is that? Like, a lot of times, people just don't fundamentally understand what D&D is. Like, a lot of people that are, relatively like older, like in like their 60s or 70s or even older than that, they think it's like a board game that you sit down and they ask, "Oh, who wins?" And it's like, "No, no, no, like you're that's not the
Yeah.
approach that you take here." And so yeah, with anybody that I have to like bring it up to or talk about, it's either they think it's, "Oh, cool, that's interesting," or I have to like sit there and actually explain to them what it is, and at the end of that, they're like, "All right, cool." So,
Yeah, and look, if you're just looking for a nice, easy way to, like, patch it all, you just tell them, "Yeah, I just get together on Sundays and I play, games with my friends online."
yeah.
And you're not lying.
Mhm. I mean, it's no more embarrassing than saying like, "Oh, I go and play poker with the dudes every weekend." Like, yeah, we pretend to be other people, but I mean, it's more interesting than getting a full flush or whatever the hell poker does.
Yeah, and we can play poker and D&D if you wanted, yeah.
Yeah, that's how we'll subvert the embarrassment. Is we'll like go out and start a motorcycle gang in D&D, play some football on the way back.
Yeah, make sure we have beer too.
Hmm.
Oh, man, but yeah, no, man, when I on session 1, I was very aware that I was an old dude.
Hmm.
Um, you don't even think about it once you get playing for a couple of weeks, and certainly after you've developed a group of friends that you meet regularly, you're nobody's thinking of age,
Hmm.
or if they do, it's just a offhand comment like, "Hey, you're the old one. Ah, shut up." Yeah.
Yeah.
I But it's not like it's not anything that comes into play whatsoever outside of your own brain.
Mhm.
Like once you get past that, you're just having fun, and that's the
Mhm.
whole point of it.
The singular moment that I was like absolutely impressed with by you is again like we talked a little bit before we started and like we didn't think that this was going to be this year-long thing. So going into session 1, my expectations were pretty loose. Like I had a good feeling about everyone that we brought in and I was like, yeah, we're going to have a good time. It's going to be D&D. But the moment you opened your mouth and this like perfect encapsulating voice of a dwarf comes out and you didn't like stutter into it or kind of like whisper quietly in the mic, you like owned the dwarf voice and I was like, hell yeah, I like this dude. And even though it was a curse, you had to keep that voice going for quite some time. I
Oh my
certainly
goodness. Yeah.
appreciated that.
I remember playing one time with the flu, and I was like, "This is horrible." No, I played with COVID once too. That was even
Mhm.
better. Yeah, but I didn't die.
But yeah, the fact that like being older and stepping into something that is completely new to you and something that it sounds like, you played RPG games before, but like you've never taken an improv class or like been interested in like theater or something. So like being that bold at your first step, I don't think is what everyone's experience is going to be, but I would highly recommend like just go for it if you are going to go for it.
And here's what I would tell. Look, like I did do like a little bit of stuff like that in high school, and it was fun for me. I enjoyed the voice acting, but you don't have to. As a matter of
Mhm.
fact, my next character is probably going to have either my voice or really close to it.
Mhm.
Don't feel like if you're coming in and playing this for the first time, don't feel like you got to like overact or be dramatic or anything. You can even play in the third person. You can be like, yeah,
Mhm.
my character goes over here and does this, and my character says this, that, and the other. That's completely acceptable. You're having a good time. You're role playing. It you play however is fun for you. And that can develop too. That can change as you go, as you get a
Mhm.
little more comfortable.
Well, I think to
Um,
clarify what I was trying to say is not like the voice was like the thing that you did right. It was the
right,
fact that like you just stepped into it without any sort of like hesitation, which I was kind of expecting out of everybody. So yeah, which
yeah,
however that looks for you personally, I would say drive it forward with like all you got because that's again if you're gonna do this, do it right.
yeah, yeah, and again, I didn't that wasn't the first time I had tried that voice out either. Once
Mhm.
I figured out, okay, we're starting the game on January 20th, I guarantee you sometime around January 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, I was sitting there like mumbling stuff in various different dwarf voices, trying to
Mhm.
figure out what sounded good, what I could, and for those of you who are interested in trying out a voice other than your own, maybe for the first time ever, um, pick up a magazine and read it in different voices. Pick up the back of a shampoo bottle and read it.
Mhm.
Practice different inflections, practice different emotions. And like one thing Nate says that really makes a lot of sense is if you can't express emotion in that voice on the happy end and the scared end or the angry end, or like if the voice doesn't work for all of that, that's not the voice for you. Tone it down a little bit. Don't, so, and again, your own voice that you've been dealing with for the last few decades, probably the best one to start with.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest way to kind of find something separate that isn't identical to your own voice so that like people can separate what your character's saying and what you're saying is just delivering with either a different like is it cadence
Cadence.
cadence, thank you. Or just like a shift in like your pitch or your tempo, or just like a very subtle adjustment that allows people to kind of subconsciously begin and end, where the player is and where the character is. I'm honestly kind of impressed that you remembered that little tidbit that I threw out there because that was a while ago. But yeah, that's my problem with like goofy character voices is while they can be bombastic and entertaining on the like, goofy clown side, when it comes to them having to be serious, it's like, oh, what? Well, I don't know, dorky. Like, it doesn't work. Like,
Yeah, my mom just died.
oh, I've been stabbed.
Yeah,
So,
but no, and and if you try it out for a month or two and you don't like it and you're like, cool, I did it, I tried it, that's fine too. You don't feel you don't have to stick with it. But I think a lot of people will be pleasantly surprised if it's the first time they've ever tried it. Um, how quickly you can like start looking forward to, hey, is it the weekend yet? You know, can any chance we can play earlier? Like um, you'll be doing whatever your regular job is, but you'll be thinking about your freaking fantasy character. Like, man, I'm an old dude. I shouldn't be, you know. Yeah, throw all that out the window. Just have fun.
yeah, I think kind of like my closing statement of all of it is just if you're interested in it, give it a shot. Like, really, there can't be anything too catastrophic on the end of just giving something a try. So that would be my
No,
general end.
yeah, I got nothing to add to that. You've got nothing to lose. And in my case, I found what appears to be a lifelong hobby going forward. I don't see really wanting to quit playing. It's settled really nicely into my life. My kids think it's funny and cool. My wife thinks it's annoying and funny and cool. And uh, and with a laptop, you can go take yourself into a back bedroom or something and set up, and you don't have to feel like, you know, anybody's watching you or,
You
you
played
know,
in the garage for a long time.
I did, because my house was so hectic. I had 4 kids running around, cats, dogs, wife coming in and out, yelling at kids. Like I knew I couldn't play at my computer, that I wanted to, because it was just going to be too hectic, right? And now I play at my computer and I tell everyone else, "Hey, it's Sunday. You guys need to keep it quiet." And and so now I play where I'm comfortable, but it took me a while to get there,
Mhm.
and but again, it's I think that that's probably where most people my age are going to have an issue with, is like feeling foolish in front of, their family, their friends. Again, nobody cares. Nobody, your family loves you, your friends like you know, and if something like D&D pushes them away, well, there's other issues there you need to take care of.
Yeah, and
It's
I
not
feel
just
like you're probably gonna get teased about it, but I imagine it most it's gonna be like surface
yeah.
level. Yeah.
Oh, and that's the fun part. When they start teasing me, I talk to them in character, and that usually shuts them up.
But any final thoughts, Sarah, before we close this one out?
No, just the big things. If you want to do it, you just got to make it a priority, figure out where it fits, find a game that fits you. Don't try, like, you're already doing something out of your comfort zone. There are so many online games out there um, that will work for your schedule. Pick one of those. Don't try to make something else work, because now you're dealing with two unknowns at the same time.
But Rob, thanks for giving me your insight as a not boomer but edge boomer.
I'm firmly Gen X. I'm not even close to being a boomer.
Mhm.
But yeah, my kids told me that you can be a boomer and not be a baby boomer generation. Boomer is just anybody that's old now. So I guess whatever.
Yeah, because
Call me
that's
whatever you want.
certainly the best way to keep communication is by just changing the definition of terms. But hey,
Yeah.
so, but hopefully we'll have James back from whatever realm he disappeared into next week, and we'll continue from there. But like, comment, subscribe, shoot any sort of questions or concerns or disagreements you have down below. Though I don't know how disagreeable you can be about what we've said today. But
It's the
anyway,
internet. Somebody will find something.
that is true. That is true. So without further ado, have a good day, guys.